Good evening and welcome to the Newshour Agenda. I'm Madhavdas G. First up, a quick look at the show at a glance. The UGC's new equity norms have sparked a nationwide debate. Framed as safeguards for SC, ST and OBC communities, these rules have triggered protests, resignations and sharp political reaction. While government insists misuse won't be allowed, critics say general categories' grievances are being ignored. We debate, will the new UGC norms curb inequity or will it deepen divides? Later on in the show, the mother of all deals is finally official. India and EU have signed the biggest free trade agreement in New Delhi's history. Prime Minister Modi hails it as a game changer, while the EU chief calls it just the beginning. Stay tuned to the show as we'll have an exclusive interview lined up with the former Prime Minister of Sweden, Carl Bildt, who played a key role in shaping this deal. Because earlier this month, the government announced new UGC regulations in order to curb caste-based discrimination faced by students from reserved categories in universities. As per the new rules, all higher education institutions are required to form a committee on campus to address complaints related to caste discrimination and ensure equity across the institution. However, this move has triggered protests from general category students who've argued that no separate provisions have been made for them. Protesters also allege that regulations could lead to an increase in complaints from reserved category students.
क्या जनरल सवर्ण के लोग क्या एसटी एससी ओबीसी पे अत्याचार कर रहे हैं? अगर ऐसा कुछ है तो आप जांच करते, जांच के बाद कानून लाते।
क्या इन्हें ये यूजीसी वालों को दिखाई नहीं दे रहा है कि इससे कितने भेदभाव पैदा हो जाएंगे, कितनी नफरत पैदा हो जाएगी?
जो जनरल कैटेगरी के बच्चे हैं, जब उनके साथ शोषण होगा तो वो किसके पास कंप्लेन करेंगे? किसके पास कंप्लेन करेंगे? ये भी मुद्दा है। अब ऐसा लग रहा है कि ये कानून आने से समान वर्ग के जो छात्र रहेंगे है ना, वो थोड़ा सा दोस्ती करने में या फिर कुछ बोलने से है ना परहेज करेंगे या फिर सोचेंगे।
Now, before we move forward, it's crucial to understand how will these regulations be implemented? How exactly are these going to work? The requirement, of course, is that higher education institutions have to have not just an equal opportunity center, but also an equity committee and equity squads, each of which will have a separate role in terms of ensuring that there is no discrimination as far as each of them is concerned. In fact, the EOC, or the Equal Opportunity Center, will be overseeing policies for disadvantaged groups, will coordinate then with the district administration as well as the police in that particular area, whereas the Equity Committee is going to be a 10-member committee chaired by the institution head. 5 of its members must be from reserved categories. They must meet within 24 hours to address complaints. And this is one of the areas where they are saying the adequate provision of representation is not being given for the general category. There's also the equity squads, which are constituted to prevent discrimination on campus. They must remain mobile and visit vulnerable spots is the mandate that they have been given. Viewers, discrimination is a problem that must be handled with an iron fist approach. Caste-based discrimination can also be against the upper caste, for instance. A general category student, therefore the protesters say, has no recourse in college in such a system. There's also a plea that was filed in the Supreme Court challenging a recently notified UGC regulation. Now, this has alleged that it has adopted a non-inclusionary definition of caste-based discrimination and excludes certain categories from institutional protection. What can also not be denied is the tragic fallout of this discrimination. We do remember Rohit Vemula, a PhD scholar, as well as Pooja Tadvi, a resident doctor who died by suicide because of alleged caste discrimination. It's their mothers who had approached the top court of the country seeking stricter rules on campus. And amidst the growing outrage, the government has now come out to assure protesters that no discrimination will be allowed. While the opposition has questioned the move, saying that the new rule will further divide society. So the big question is that is it time for the government to either relook at the new UGC norms before it tears our youth apart, particularly given the kind of nature of protests that are not just happening now, but are also threatened to take place over the next few days.
किसी को उत्पीड़न होने नहीं दिया जाए, कोई भेदभाव नहीं होगा, कोई डिस्क्रिमिनेशन के नाम पे किसी को भी मिसयूज करने का अधिकार नहीं रहेगा। और ये जो विषय आई है ये तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट की निगरानी में व्यवस्था है, किसी के ऊपर भी अत्याचार या किसी को भी भेदभाव नहीं किया जाएगा।
बीजेपी को कोई नुकसान नहीं है और नाराज किस बात के लिए होंगे। सामान्य वर्ग मंदिर बनाने की बात किया, मंदिर बनवा दिया एनडीए सरकार ने। 10% आरक्षण की बात किया, आरक्षण भी सरकार ने दे दिया। तो नाराज काम कहाँ नहीं हो रहा है।
यूजीसी ने जो
हम लोगों ने लगातार कहा है कि कास्ट सेंसस होना चाहिए, कास्ट सेंसस में ये सारे इश्यूज रिजॉल्व हो जाएंगे।
यूजीसी ने कुछ गलत नहीं किया। यूजीसी ने जो अन्याय हो रहा था उसकी शिकायत करने के लोगों को मौका दे दिया, बस और कुछ नहीं।
उत्तर प्रदेश में लगातार ब्राह्मणों के साथ जिस तरह से नाइंसाफी हो रही थी, हर कदम पे नाइंसाफी हो रही थी, हर विभाग में नाइंसाफी हो रही थी, तो उसको लेके जो मजिस्ट्रेट हैं अग्निहोत्री जी, उन्हीं ने रिजाइन दिया है।
Whatever is being done is already too little. It is not giving confidence to the people from the backward and the oppressed society.
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
Let's take this across to our guest now. Joining us is Pattabhiram Komareddy, national spokesperson of the TDP. We have Shaina NC, spokesperson of the Shiv Sena Shinde. Firoz Bakht Ahmed is former VC of MANNU. We have Ravi Shankar Ravi, national spokesperson of the RJD. Kamru Zaman Chowdhury is a political analyst joining us, as is Shubhankar Bhattacharya, political analyst. Let me start first and foremost with Shaina NC. Shaina NC, now the UGC regulation very specifically says, and let me read it to be very clear about what it says, that caste-based discrimination means discrimination only on the basis of caste or tribe against members of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, other backward castes, so on and so forth. One, if Article 14 of our Constitution talks about equality of all citizens, can discrimination be only one way, or can it be the other way also? And who's going to protect that aspect of it is what these protesters are all saying.
Look, we're only talking about a negative. Why can't we view this in totality? The honorable courts have given a guideline, and those guidelines have been implemented. Now, when we talk about equal opportunity centers, what does it say? It says that there should be no mandatory institution which is, trying to manipulate or to promote. It must promote inclusivity. Now, that is a foregone. But when we come to the equity committees, a lot of people have said, why have we talked about just scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, scheduled OBCs? I mean, women are included. Women are 50% of this country. Women have been included in this category, as have people with disabilities too. There is a 24/7 helpline. Now, have people even deliberated on what this helpline is to do? It is to report the cases where there is any kind of discrepancy, and immediately penalties to be levied. Now,
that's all fine. They are all discriminated categories. I completely agree with you, Shaina NC. But why should there not be a specific provision for the general category? Is a question that all these students are asking.
Aren't women general category? Aren't women general category? 50% of this country, is that not? And here, please understand, there are monitoring techniques where the UGC
this is an argument.
Make sure that this implementation that takes place to conduct.
This is an argument, ma'am. The point is that when it comes to the implementation of this, at the end of the day, you have, of course, women who are going to look after the interest of women, and rightly so. You have, as you rightly said, disabled individuals. You may have those from the SC, ST and OBC category. The simple point being made by all of these protesting youth is that why not have a specific category for general provision also, so that their interest is represented on that panel.
So, but if you have, 1 second, let me complete my point. If you have a 24/7 helpline, if there is something wrong which is brought to light, that is open to a general category or no? If you have an equal opportunity center where if there is any complaint, is that not open to the general category also? If there are penalties which are leveled, if there's any financial misrepresentation or misconduct, isn't that open to the general category also? So, we are only trying to say that what have we done wrong? Why can't we look at what has been done right? And this sets aside the precedent that if there are lacunas in the system, you fight it and you fight it collectively. You cannot discriminate for higher education on merit too, as well as on the premise that there are certain backward classes
So,
that need to
are
be
you going
also
to say that all these protesters are wrong?
And if
those who are on the streets who are demanding their rights, they are wrong?
Look, every citizen is entitled to an opinion, but please do understand the government has only acted on the court directive. And on the court directive, have these recommendations and regulations come into effect?
Okay, let's go into it point by point. Kamruzaman Chaudhary, we are only following the court directives. We all know the kind of outcry as far as Rohit Vemula case is concerned, Payal Tadvi case is concerned. We are only implementing that. So why is the opposition now raking up that issue if we are just implementing the social justice guidelines that Supreme Court has directed the government to implement? Respond to that.
Yeah, Madhav, good evening. Today, I feel sorry for Shaina madam out here. You should have brought in a BJP spokesperson, the party which brought in these regulations, to answer the questions, the scathing questions that India is asking right now. But one thing you must understand, that for the first time, the Bharatiya Janata Party government has accepted that there exists discrimination in the system, which is structural, and the solution must be systemic. But they are bringing in a piecemeal rules and guidelines where the necessity was a rule as a law enacted by the parliament to get into it. Without consultations, they brought in some arbitrary laws, push that into the universities and make the people to accept it, and they give an argument that because of the Supreme Court judgment we had to bring it. But now, Madhav, compare that with the 2013 Equal Opportunity Commission that was suggested by the UPA government in 2013 under Manmohan Ji. What did it say? It says the same Equal Opportunity Commission across all sectors like the education, employment, housing, public institutions. There was a whole lot of issues that were there going on. Still, these are there at present. It was covering all disadvantaged groups like the SC, ST, OBCs, religious, linguistic minorities, women, people with disabilities, economically and socially marginalized. Now, what you have brought out here is totally unacceptable to most of us, because it only addresses a particular section, a particular problem that is there in the universities. Now, what about the Northeast people who are from the general category, but they face discrimination in universities of North India? While racial discrimination is there against them, where do you address that? They are from the general category.
Very valid point. I'm going to allow that point. It's a valid point. In fact, let Pattabhiram Komareddy answer that. Pattabhiram Komareddy, who is going to ensure? We've seen, of course, recent cases, and it's not new. We don't need Tanya. As far as Angel Chakma is concerned, there's an investigation going on. I'm sure the investigation will bring to light what has happened. There are serious charges. The family there is leveled. What about discrimination against people of the Northeast who face racial discrimination? Where is the provision for that?
Madhav, good evening to you and to my fellow panelists. The Honorable Union Minister Dharmendra Pradhan Ji had categorically stated that there will be absolutely no discrimination towards any section of students studying in these universities, and they will ensure that no kind of misuse also happens. And also, we are coming to know that the Education Ministry is also planning to issue further clarifications also on this, to dispel all the fears that are being circulated. And the most important thing, as my friend Shaina had said, these guidelines are framed strictly in accordance with the Supreme Court directions and are guided by the constitutional values of the right to equality and right to education. See, the objective of the entire process is preventive and corrective, to ensure that no student faces institutional discrimination or neglect, irrespective of their social background, and also to avoid tragedies like the unjust death of Rohit Vemula. So, I mean, we have to understand this in this context. And also, we should also underline the fact that the Union Ministry and the Honorable Minister have clearly assured that these guidelines will not be misused. And also the responsibility not only lies on the agency, but also the central government and also the state governments
Okay.
to ensure fair, constitutional, and unbiased implementation.
Okay, and let me bring in Ravi Shankar Ravi. Ravi Shankar Ravi is a national spokesperson of RJD. Mr. Ravi Shankar Ravi, one of your spokespersons, Kanchan Yadav, has been quoted as today saying that young general category students deserve to be framed in false charges because they never gave rights to SC, STs and OBCs. This is a very clear admission of the kind of misuse that can potentially take place of such legal provisions, and it's coming in from your own party spokesperson.
No, Madhav, I think this has been grossly misunderstood and misrepresented. What she said is that those who commit and those who are involved, those who will be involved in the acts of discrimination, they should be framed. And what ultimately is this regulation for?
One second. Let's just let our viewers listen to what that bite is. This is your selective interpretation, sir. What she has said is quite specific. It's not as simple as you're making it out to be. Listen to Kanchan Yadav.
आपको
सर फसाना चाहिए का क्या मतलब होता है कि आपने कभी भी हक नहीं दिया? It's quite specific.
माधव, आज उन्होंने ये क्लैरिफिकेशन भी दिया है इस बात पे कि शब्दों का चयन, द सिलेक्शन ऑफ द वर्ड्स वाज improper, but what she meant was what I said.
Sir, people will go by what you mean. अगर clarification देनी पड़ रही है, then she has said something basically wrong. And that is no, this is not correct, sir. This is exactly the reason students are out on the street. They are very angry with the political parties of this country.
Is not the reason.
And it does not matter whether they are in the ruling dispensation or in the opposition. Because they are playing fast and loose with the societal and social fabric.
No.
Yes, there has been historic discrimination, but that does not give right of responsible people, especially spokespersons, to speak in such irresponsible terms. आप लोगों को भड़काने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं?
Those who are protesting, they are for the status quo. They do not want a progressive step in this direction for the realization of prevention of discrimination in higher educational institutions.
Sir, Pura Bal Saaf Karo was whose line?
Never ever Laluji has said that. Every time in media we hear this.
He has never said it.
Can you show us any authentic source?
He has never said it.
Can you quote this?
Firoz Bakr, would you like to remind our RJD panelist? Lalu has never used such a line.
Yes, he has never used this.
Okay, let's get a response to what you have said.
Yes,
let's get a response.
Madhav Ji, am I allowed to speak?
Floor is yours, sir. Please go ahead.
A very humble request to all. Thank you so much, Madhav. A very humble request to all my fellow panelists, learned panelists, and you also, Madhav, not to heckle me in between. Because I have heard all these people, some of them are from political parties. As far as Kanchan is concerned, from RJD, nobody is with her. However, let me tell you one thing. The education sector of any country, whether it is school or it is higher education, it is very important. And, I really like the policies of this government. I like the Prime Minister's, the way he has been leading the nation. But this latest UGC regulation, this is going to break the country maybe into certain pieces. UGC has already laid down rules, whether it was Vemula or it was Amay Pandey in 2008 or it was maybe Nardeep Singh in 2009. They were all, in fact, they committed suicide because of this caste discrimination. However, finally, let me tell you one thing. As far as caste, community, ethnicity, region, regionalism, religion, all these things are concerned, there are very clear guidelines. There was no need for the government to do this. And lastly, the general category, whether it is Brahmins or common Muslims or any other religion or any other community, they are going to suffer because most of these reservations, there is a reservation for SC, ST, OBC, Kashmiri migrants, and there are so many others. Now, what are these poor general categories, the Brahmins, where are they going to do? Where are they going to land? And that's why there is countrywide, in fact, protest. The Minister of Education, a very, honored person, he should look into these things very seriously because the student community is the backbone of the country. And if India is going to be the leader of the world, students should be at peace. So I am not with these latest regulations of UGC. I also, very respect and regard China. She is a very good colleague, but the way she has tried to defend these irregular regulations, these regulations against the commoners, I mean the common Brahmins, the people who have no reservations. I think if at all, last 2 seconds, if at all any reservation is to be made, I have been writing in many columns that reservations are not to be made on the basis of caste. They should be made on the basis of the haves and have-nots. So government has not done a very good thing, though I support this government.
Since you've taken Shaina's name, I'm going to give her a chance to rebut you. Shaina NC, it's not correct to defend what the government has done in this case, and here is somebody who's been a vice chancellor. He understands higher education, and he is saying so. Your response to him?
I want to ask, sir, just one question. When you have a 24/7 helpline, which is only working towards getting all the reportings and the findings of any case if there is any discrimination, is that not a step in the right position, sir? We talk about the Equity Committee. Where did we ever have the representation of 50% of the population of women, sir? Did we ever have a representation of people with disabilities, sir? All of this is inclusiveness. If you have penalties where institutions, choose to do underhand dealings, have misuse of funds, and they are not complying, there is a monitoring agency for the UGC which will track the implementation and conduct inspections. Now, is this not all positive in its essence? And when you have the Equal Opportunity Center, which is mandatory for every single educational institute, private or otherwise, and to handle complaints to promote inclusivity, is this not a step in the right direction? And when the honorable courts feel that this is what needs to be done so that we ensure higher education, there is parity. In higher education, there is no caste-based prejudice. There is no discrimination to promote a particular class or a particular section. Is this not what India and Naya Bharat is all about? So I want to just
highlight a few points. I want to just highlight a few points and a few cases, in fact, and Shubhankar Bhattacharya can come in on this. This is in fact to those who are specifically supporting the UGC's anti-discrimination guidelines. This is the first case of August 2025, where there's a lawyer, Parmanand Gupta. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for filing 29 fake SC/ST cases, including rape allegations by misusing a Dalit woman's identity. In May 2025, another report where an advocate, Lakhan Singh, was sentenced to 10 years and 6 months for running what the court called a factory of false SC/ST FIRs. There is also in October 2025 a special SC/ST court convicting a woman for a false 2019 complaint, warning that misuse for compensation is increasing and ruling that FIR alone cannot justify relief. Shubhankar Bhattacharya, nobody is against social justice. And it cannot be in anybody's case that in this country there need to be measures such as reservations, so on and so forth. But when you have such provisions, which are obviously one-sided and the students are saying so, leave aside political parties. The big question is, how do we prevent this kind of misuse if it has happened? And I have multiple cases. I've just read out 3 for you. There are multiple cases where courts have ordered and have adjudicated about how there has been indeed misuse.
See, Madhav, I won't question. I might agree with a lot of points in the policy. I might even agree with that the policy has been introduced with a lot of good intentions. But again, there are 2 major questions, basically, The first major question is, why is every policy introduced by this government is always a result of a rushed rollout? That is one thing which is, and then what happens that you actually don't go through a wider consultation. You don't include parties in, So that is one big problem. The second big problem is that every policy, every bill that you introduce, why is it inflicting a divide in the community, in the group? Wherever you're going, you're creating a divide. So these are the 2 main things that you have to look into. Is it all happening because there are elections in front? That is one of the reasons behind it. There have been reasons. See, you are, the beneficiary of this particular policy would have been the students. The same students who are now filing the PILs with the courts. So the thing is, if your beneficiaries are not getting benefited, then what is the major effect that you are trying to bring in among the community? That is the one thing. The second thing is, what kind of atmosphere do you want your children to study in? What kind of atmosphere you think should university have? So are you going to keep it? It's good to have safety. I said that It has been done with a lot of good intentions. I completely agree. But then again, do you want your ward, your children to grow up in an atmosphere where they should have a divide, where they are always, they cannot even make a simple joke that can be also always be taken as a discriminatory thing? What kind of a scareful, atmosphere we are going to introduce? So this is one thing that is, which is, I think, which is bothering us deeply. That a fearsome society is not going to be very good. Fearsome society, we don't want.
Okay, lack of consultation of opposition. You've not consulted them. That is the argument coming in Pattabhiram Committee. And also there is an important question. When the communal violence bill was being brought in by the UPA government, then leader Arun Jaitley had raised an important point, and he wrote that the entire aspect on the similar grounds about caste discrimination being in a one-directional manner, no penalties for false complaints, and relying on vague terms. For instance, there is a concept of either discrimination being explicit or discrimination being implicit. Who's going to define what is implicit discrimination, sir? Because what is in one person's mind need not be what is going on in another person's mind. Please unmute yourself and speak. We can't hear you.
Yeah, Madhav, sorry. See, the union government is currently acting very cautiously. We are taking note of all the objections and questions that are being raised, and there are certain clarifications that are also expected very soon. See, all the while, we should understand that the entire thing is guided by the Honorable Supreme Court. In Jan 2025, the Supreme Court had noted that most of the institutions had failed to set up grievance redressal mechanisms or equal opportunity cells. And then the court had directed the UGC to collect data from all universities and submit affidavits. And after student suicides in IIT Delhi, it is the Supreme Court which had ordered the formation of a national task force. So, see, from the past 1.5 years, it is the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court, which is like guiding at various instances, asking to take steps, asking to take measures.
Yes, but then the point is the concerns could have been addressed while balancing the interests of all sections of society. Is it that the entire provisions that have now come out are a bit lopsided and skewed? That's the concern certainly that students and certain parties are expressing. We'll have to leave it there. Pattabhiram Committee, Shaina NC, Firoz Bakht Ahmed, Ravi Shankar Ravi, Kamruzaman Chaudhary, Shubhankar Bhattacharya. To thank all of you for joining us this evening.